I'm Justin Glaw, writer and journalist, and I've spent my career chronicling the violence, unrest, and chaos of American life. On this podcast, I'll discuss the events roiling this complex and troubling country and speak with some of the people trying to make sense of the madness that pervades our world. This is American Doom. Hey everybody, today I am talking with friends of Teresa Borrenpohl, Idaho woman who was dragged out of a Republican town hall recently by private security as the local sheriff looked on. And I think this event is troubling, obviously, for a lot of reasons on its own, but I think it's indicative of some places that we are headed, both in terms of emboldened law enforcement that supports Trump, as the sheriff does, and also in terms of Americans' disdain and lack of appreciation for the acts of their elected officials. Let's get started. Tamara and Laura, thank you so much for joining me today. I want to get to your guys' perspective and views of everything that happened at the event last week, I guess, or earlier this week. Can't remember when it was. Sorry. And I know that you guys were right there when all of this was going down. So if you don't mind, please explain to everybody exactly what happened here.
We had all met or all planned ahead of time to meet at the town hall. There were 6 of us, I think, that decided to meet at the town hall, and we were doing what we always do, which is heckling the legislators or the people speaking. We have never had a chance at these town halls to ask a question or to give public comment. So we feel like the only way to have our voices heard is to heckle. We yelled out things that were appropriate to what was being discussed. We were also booing. There were people all over the auditorium who were cheering, booing, clapping, speaking out of turn. We were the only ones who were targeted, I guess, is what you want to say. The sheriff came over. I was sitting next to Teresa Borrenpohl. She was on my right. Tamara was a couple seats down on my left. And Sheriff Norris came up. I didn't realize it was him at first because it was dark and he wasn't wearing his uniform. He did have his badge on his belt, though, which I realized, and his hat also said Kootenai County Sheriff. So he came up and tried to pull Teresa out of her seat. He had told us to be quiet, and he said if we didn't be quiet, we were going to be removed. So he began trying to remove Teresa from her seat. At that point, I kind of grabbed onto her arm, linked arms with her to try to keep her in her seat. He was unsuccessful, so we motioned for 2 men in black jackets to come to her seat. They began trying to physically pull her however they could, grabbing arms, legs, hair, whatever they could find to pull her out of there. And they eventually got her on the floor, face down. They were both on her back. One of them had their knee on her back. She couldn't move. She couldn't speak. Prior to that, when they first started grabbing her, she was yelling, "Who are you? Who are you?"
And she was asking Sheriff Norris if they were his deputies. Who are these people? Because they were in plain clothes with no identification, and they weren't answering any questions. And I would also like to add that, it was an auditorium that holds probably about 400 people is what I saw someone estimate that was there. And it was not just us that would throw out, random comments. There were a lot of people throughout the entire auditorium that were doing this. And also, it wasn't constant. At the time that Teresa was and the rest of us were asked to leave, it had already been going on close to an hour, I believe, of the legislators being on the stage and speaking. So it had already been going on for quite a while, and they had gotten quite a lot of talking time in to talk about what they were up to this legislative session, and the heckling and the cheering and the clapping. It was the entire auditorium. It wasn't just us.
Right. So it seems a little bit out of place, I guess, that Teresa was targeted when there was lots of other people who were engaged in the same type of conduct. I mean, yes. Do you guys have any indication that her previous, I know she ran for local office before. I know she's something of an outspoken voice in terms of progressive issues and things like that. I know nothing officially has come down, but is there a belief maybe that she was targeted because she's this outspoken person about these type of things, or do you think that it was just random, or I mean, was she being louder than everybody else? Like, is there?
No,
She
Yeah,
was
was
definitely
definitely,
targeted. She was
yeah,
absolutely targeted. Sheriff
yeah,
Norris actually told us, four of us, to leave, including Teresa.
yeah.
Um, he was targeting all of us because he knows who we are. He knows
okay,
our names. We've been to public meetings before. We've held him to account before. He is not fans of ours, and he calls us liberal activists.
okay.
He probably has more ire against Teresa than the rest of us, just because she has ran for office. She's very vocal. She was very vocal through everything that happened with our local community college, which is a whole other story. But yeah, she was definitely targeted because of her beliefs. We were all targeted because of the negative things we were saying. Nobody who was yelling in positive support of them were talked to. It was only us, and we were targeted because of our political beliefs and because of what we were saying.
What was the reaction that was happening around you as this was going on? I mean, were there other people there who were there to voice opposition to the elected officials who were speaking, who were kind of rallying to support you guys, or anybody really? I'm just curious as to like what people were thinking and saying and doing while these three sort of like plainclothes private security guys are essentially dragging your friend out of this meeting. What was happening around you at that time?
So directly around us, I heard a lot of yelling of asking the men to identify themselves, asking them for their badges. And then also we were yelling at Sheriff Norris, they are assaulting her. That's what I kept repeating. You're letting them assault her. And there was a man that was sitting to Teresa's right who I could not hear what he was saying to Sheriff Norris, but I could see him talking to him. And then later, after when I eventually left the auditorium, that man was zip tied out in the hallway. So there were actually people trying to help, and there were others in the audience that were yelling supportive things. Right in that moment, I didn't see that as much just because of the commotion. But after every people are sharing their videos of elsewhere in the auditorium, there were a lot of other supporters that were standing up and voicing concern. But when we have our county sheriff, it looks like he's directing things.
Mm-hmm.
It was very intimidating to intervene in any
Mm-hmm.
way. I mean, Laura and I, he called after Teresa was removed, he called for more security officers for us and wanted us removed as well. And I heard him asking for more zip ties. And Laura just linked arms with me and said, just sit down and stay here. And so we did, but it
Well,
was
because
absolutely scary.
at that point, he threatened to arrest us. He
Yes.
first said we were kicked out, and then he threatened to arrest us, and then he called for security. And the only reason that we weren't also dragged out of there is because there were no more security guards. They were all on top of Teresa trying to get her out of there, and there was nobody to come drag us. So Norris stood there and filmed us with his phone for about 5 minutes. Once he realized nobody was coming, he left. And at that point, we felt like we were safe to leave the auditorium to go check on Teresa because we had no idea what was happening with her at that point.
And I'll note also too that it sounds like I mean there's clearly some like kind of a law enforcement jurisdictional turf war that's going on here, but outside of the venue, the police department, like officers with the police department, were outside, but they weren't inside. So the sheriff is inside, and he's directing these private security people. The police officers are outside, and they don't really know about any of this until pretty much the whole situation is done. And I mean, who then takes Teresa off to jail? Like, did the police department people come in and do it, or was it these private security people?
She didn't go to jail.
Okay,
She was cited for battery for biting one of the
right.
security guards, but she was let go. They actually let her go right before it got over so that we could all get out of there without there being a scene when everybody exited the auditorium.
I want to talk about some of the conflicting statements that you guys mentioned that the sheriff was involved with. He said he wasn't really there and like directing any of this, but you had said something that he said that seems to conflict directly with the fact that he is seen in the videos standing right there recording the incident himself on his phone. Explain that if you can.
I believe it was to the Statesman, the Idaho Statesman, that he said that he left the auditorium to go check in with the police who were there because of the threat on Representative Redmond.
Mm-hmm.
He said he left the auditorium, and when he came back, they were already dragging Teresa out. And as you can see from the video that I took, that is not true. He was directing security from the very beginning.
She literally looks up and asks him to his face, Sheriff Norris, who are these guys, as they're pulling her out. So yeah.
And he's recording with his phone while all of this is happening too. And you can see that in the video.
Yes. And in the video, you can hear him threaten Teresa with pepper spray when he was first trying to pull her up out of her seat, and she was not complying.
And is he also the one who says something about like little girl? There's someone in the video who makes a comment about little girl or something. It's hard to tell where that comes from.
No, that was Ed Bejarana. Sorry, go ahead, Tamara.
No, I was just going to say you answer that one because I can't remember his name, but
Ed Bejarana, his nickname is Fat Eddie. He is a podcaster, and then he also does narrating for Audible. He was moderating the event, and so he would go up and introduce the legislators and whatnot. And before the incident happened, he was scolding us. He was saying, these people just came here to disrupt. Look at these people, they just want attention. And then when everything started going down, he I would say instigated, and he said, he called Teresa a little girl. He said, look at this little girl over here who just wants attention. She's getting what she deserves. He said that her opinion doesn't matter. He told her she has no voice. It was really inappropriate. And I think that he is reaping the consequences of his actions, because I've seen some information that some of the Audible authors are speaking out against him and firing him and saying they won't work with him anymore. What he was doing was absolutely making it worse.
Give me a sense of kind of where this event falls in terms of the broader issues within the community. I mean, is it as simple as, the city is a more liberal and progressive place, and outside the city in the county, it's not. And so there's this tension there. Is it, I guess explain whether or not like stuff like this is happening on a regular basis, or whether this was a little bit of an outlier, because I'm trying to figure out and trying to understand whether or not there's some like broader implications and meaning that we can draw from what we saw here. I mean, I think there definitely is in terms of a law enforcement angle, because Sheriff Norris is a huge Trump supporter. The day after the event, he posts a MAGA hat on his Facebook page. He posts a picture of him at the inauguration. He posts a picture of him with Greg Abbott. He posts a post-election poll from when he was elected, showing how much support he has. So while he's not really like answered any of my questions or answered a lot of questions, he sort of seems like he's kind of like sticking his thumb in the eye of everybody who's upset about this situation by saying like, oh, here I am, I'm for Trump. Can you explain like kind of where this incident falls in terms of like the politics and the issues and more broadly in the community?
You want me to take that one, Tamara?
I was going to say, you probably know more about the KCRCC and the, people kind of taking over the local boards and things.
Yeah, so we are a very red area. All of Idaho is pretty red, but North Idaho especially. We haven't elected a Democrat in over a decade. This definitely fits into the greater scheme of things in North Idaho. Sheriff Norris declared himself a constitutional sheriff, pretty much right upon being elected.
Okay.
He has appeared at white nationalist events here locally. For a long time, we have not had faith in him as a law enforcement officer. He has declared that there are certain laws that he will refuse to uphold, such as related to gun control. He And it's not just him. He fits right into the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee, who was the host of the town hall. They host all of the legislative town halls here in North Idaho, and they are extremely far right. Now, recently, some of our more moderate Republicans here in Kootenai County decided to take action, and they ran for the precinct captain seats on the committee, and they won 30 of the 75 or 80 seats. So they won quite a bit of control, but not enough to have full control of the committee. The Central Committee has worked with white nationalists such as Brittany Pettibone and Martin Sellner. They wrote a resolution to Homeland Security to allow Martin Sellner into the country. He was on a no entry list because of his ties to the Christchurch shooter.
Mm.
And he is definitely known as a white nationalist. In Europe is where he is located. But the Central Committee has for many years now been doing concerning things that are extremely far right, that are extremely out of line with the majority of the way Idahoans think. They're not, just like our legislature, they're not focusing on those local issues that are important to our community. Instead, they are participating in outrageous activities. And
I was gonna say, not only are they not focusing on like good things for our community, but they're directly trying to destroy institutions in our community. Our public library, the community library network, the board has been taken over by these extremists who are literally locking up library books. Just, I mean, yeah. And then our community college, North Idaho College, the board had extremists on for a while that were trying to make the college lose its accreditation. So
Okay.
they almost succeeded.
They almost succeeded, but we were able to, well, not we, but like community members were able to come together to fight against that. And we finally got more board control.
So it sounds like, what you guys are experiencing is in line with what a lot of kind of rural places have experienced in recent years, where there's this kind of radicalization of local Republican Party structures and things like that. I mean, the constitutional sheriff movement is a pretty far right, or loose knit organization of people. The other reason I think that this has implications on what we're experiencing nationally is that one of the sort of background to all of this is that there was legislation that essentially is going to like affect Medicare and Medicaid services in Idaho. Yes. A local citizen was upset about that and made a direct threat to one of the legislators that was talking at this town hall. And so therefore, because of that threat, that's when the sheriff says, well, I have to be there, which he doesn't go there with his deputies to act as security to make sure this threat isn't carried out. He apparently just goes there himself. And then there's these private security guys there, but like, that's sort of the background of all of this. And so the reason that I think it has national implications is like the cuts to the social safety net is something that's being carried out by the Trump administration now, and that's going to affect millions of Americans. And this is also being carried out at the local and the state level by people like your Republican elected officials. So, while it's not good to have people threatening their elected officials, in a way, it's like they're bringing this upon themselves by pursuing these policies that don't align with the communities that they serve. And like, this is kind of where all of this got started. I mean, do I have that understanding right?
They were discussing Medicaid expansion, but they were also discussing school vouchers, and that is also a big point of contention in our community because our schools in Idaho rank 49th or 50th in funding in the United States. They're severely underfunded because of our Idaho state legislature, and if we pass school vouchers, they're going to lose even more money, and so it's really concerning. Some of our schools have had to go to 4 days a week instead of 5 because they just can't even afford to keep their doors open. We've had
Yeah,
schools in Idaho close altogether.
we had to close. Our local Coeur d'Alene school district had to close an elementary school this year, and so there. I think there were also a lot of educators in the audience that were concerned about this bill in particular that maybe aren't normally super involved, but there's been a lot of talk about the school voucher bill.
Mm-hmm.
I want to wrap this up with a question, a theoretical question, I guess, which is like, as a result of all of this, the charges against Teresa have been dropped. The license for the private security firm that was operating there in the form of these three men who, arrested her, for lack of a better term, that license has been revoked. So there has been some positive, I guess, in a way, developments that have come. But I want to ask you guys, like, what do you think would have happened? Would those things have happened if there wasn't direct video evidence of these people doing what they did? If you guys didn't take the video that a lot of folks have seen now, would the charges have been dropped? Would this private security firm being held to account? What can you tell us your thoughts on that?
I think that our video is so important for this matter because um, a lot of our elected officials lie. Norris has lied to us before. Brent Regan, the chair of the Republican Central Committee, has lied to us. The Central Committee itself has put out lies. We do not trust them to tell the truth. And that's why when Teresa turned to us and said, get this all on video, I took that as my job because I
Mm-hmm.
knew that it was going to be so important to have evidence because nobody was going to believe us over Norris and over Brent Regan and over the Central Committee. I'm just appalled that the legislators and Brent Regan and other, elected officials in the room didn't do anything, didn't say anything. They just sat there
Well,
and let
not
it.
only didn't say anything, but some of them spurred it on and tried to elevate the situation, elevate the risk as well. And yeah, I definitely don't think that we would be believed if we didn't have the video. When I finally got out into the hallway and the Coeur d'Alene police officers had arrived, they were taking photos of the aggressors. They were taking photos of the little scratches on their hands, and I kept saying they dragged her out. They dragged her out. They physically pulled on her, and then Sheriff Norris is there, and yeah, if we didn't have that video, I do not think that there would be any consequences. And I'm
When
hoping,
the police were just believing everything that Norris said.
yes,
And I told them I had evidence that they could look at my video, that it backed up everything Teresa was telling them, and they had no interest in seeing it. And thankfully, other people at the police department thought that was important and started reviewing the evidence. But the officers on scene seemed to just take everything Norris said as true.
Well, it seems that the chief of police has, if not had a change of heart, becoming like a sort of a very outspoken person in all of this. And I can't help but wonder whether or not that's related to the video that came out, right?
for
Because
sure.
a lot of the actions that he's taken happened after the video came out, saying that he's not going, and that he's going to tell the local prosecutor not to charge Teresa and, and helping to revoke the license of the private security firm. All of that happened after the video, went viral. So, in a way, it's like, okay, it's good on him, but also it's like, would that have even happened if the video didn't exist? And as far as the local legislators sitting there and allowing this to happen and even egging it on, I mean, are you guys under the suspicion that like it was probably them or whoever put the event on that hired the private security firm, or do we think it's Sheriff Norris?
We believe it was the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee.
Right, because it was their event.
Yes.
But they're denying. They're denying that they hired them. They said they were volunteers.
Give me your sort of final thoughts on this, what it means for you, for your friend Teresa, for the community at large, and if there's any sort of broader message that people across the country might be able to take from this.
Tamara, you want me to say?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. I am very frightened by what happened, and I think that it shows a deeper problem in our community. And what I really hope is that the people who have been brave enough to stand up and speak the truth and put their neck out there for their beliefs, I hope that they don't stop. I hope that this doesn't scare people into staying home and being quiet, because that's exactly what they want. And I will not do that. I will be louder, and I will be more present, and I will do everything I can to try to save our community from the extremists who are trying to take it over.
Tamara?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just happy. I mean, obviously I'm not happy this happened at all, but the fact that this story is getting out there and people are seeing what we have been seeing, because we have been seeing, I mean, not situations to this level, but we have seen our elected leaders, like Sheriff Norris, have this power that he really thought that he could do whatever he wanted, and he was above any repercussion or consequences. And so I'm hoping that that's gonna change, that they realize, they're none of them are above the law. And so that's what I'm hoping comes out of this.
We're really also hoping to see some charges brought against Sheriff Norris and against the security guards who all physically assaulted Teresa.
Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to American Doom. This podcast is just a part of my work as a writer and journalist. To keep up, or at least to try to, because chaos and speed are the two primary drivers of my work, you can subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just search for American Doom there, and you'll find the investigations and stories that I cover. Coming up on my newsletter are more dives into election deniers working as local election officials across the country. This is work I've been doing mostly by myself for the last 4 years, and it's not possible without your support. American Doom is the only place that you'll find reporting on local election denier officials. So if you support this effort to protect against threats to democracy, please subscribe to my newsletter, American Doom, on Substack. Thank you.